Alright, let me start off this video by saying I am going to make this a two-parter because I have an entirely separate things and list to go over for the problems of ground SB versus air SB. And now I'm not going to bore you with the details right here. I'm just going to post that next video probably tomorrow or the next day. Anyway, let's get on with this video. Okay, for the first part of this video, I'm going to talk about what separates Sim from other game modes like realistic or arcade, in the form of Sim is a much different experience. A Sim locks you into the full real control mode, Sim will lock you into your cockpit, and in Sim, a lot of things are quite different, like the map size, and just how everything usually goes and how the average game goes. Now, how exactly does Sim work? Well, Sim doesn't pay you based on your destruction of bases, and it doesn't pay you on your your activity. It mostly pays you on useful actions. Now, you still get, I guess, SL and RP for destroying bases, shooting down aircraft, bombing ground targets, all of that. You still get SL and RP, but where the real money that you're going to rake in is in your useful actions. Useful actions will occur every, 15 minutes or every time that you die, and if you have, there's a score cap of, I believe, 1,500. So if you have above 1,500 score, you are getting the max rewards that your aircraft of your rank can get for that 15-minute timer. And once that gets to you, it completely resets. And then if you don't have 1,500 score by the next time, say you have 700, you won't make as much. Now, does this mean Sim is a bad game? Because the useful actions were nerfed a while back, and now they're a fraction of what they were, but Sim's still probably the most profitable game mode in the game. If you have a premium and you have just a little bit of time on your hands, you can make an insane amount of SL and RP in just one game of Sim. Now, this game that I'm playing right here in the MiG-23ML is an example of that, as I finished out the game with over 400,000 SL and 70,000 RP. Air Sim, unlike other game modes, has different win conditions and different things to do. As I talked about useful actions in the previous section, I'm going to be going over what gets you those points towards useful actions, because there's quite a few things. In Air Sim, sometimes a air supremacy point will spawn, and that'll be a little A icon in a certain square on the map, and as long as you're in that grid, you'll capture that, and the first team to capture that gets a bump up in tickets, but also gets that zone in the future on the map. Another thing that'll happen pretty commonly is bombers of either your team and the enemy team, or attackers of your team and the enemy team will spawn, and it'll tell you the grid square that they spawn in, and you can either go to destroy them or protect them depending on what team they're on. And another thing that'll happen is ground battles will actually spawn with tanks. Sometimes they'll spawn with like recoilless rifles, but they'll always have SPA, so be careful of that. Sometimes a convoy will spawn. It'll tell you the square and it'll show up on your map, but also it'll it'll move until it despawns, basically. And once it despawns, obviously it can't be destroyed anymore. That convoy will usually go 1 or 2 grid squares before despawning. It'll usually have 10 to 12 vehicles in it, and most of those vehicles will be tanks with some SPAA and some infantry fighting vehicles, either like Bradleys, BMPs, or some other form of infantry fighting vehicle, depending on the team, the map, and all sorts of different things. Okay, now how is Air Sim neglected? Well, I think personally Air Sim's neglected as it hasn't really seen anything new, and all of the Air Sim maps have a little bit of nuance to them, as they all have a similar amount of airfields, all have a similar amount of bases, random events are always the same, and they just really haven't had much, difference put into them and as much care put into them as realistic or arcade games. But Sims always takes place on an enduring confrontation map, and it's a bigger map, and it has a line. It's usually a bigger version of an already existing map. However, the thing that just makes Air Sim repetitive and boring is that it's always the same objectives. It's always destroy the enemy bombers, or attackers, or escort, or it's this ground battle spawned in this sector, or just this air supremacy at this enemy surveillance aircraft. It never really changes. And the problem with Air Sim is this has been going on for, I think, 3 or so years now, and Air Sim just hasn't seen any major updates, other than BR, of course, as newer and newer planes get added. And speaking on newer and newer planes, the newer planes that get added have a clear advantage over planes got added before them, as they have much longer range weapons, better radars, and just more room to destroy other aircraft and basically dominate the skies. And as these aircraft get better and better and weapon systems become stronger and stronger, you really don't have as much room on these maps as you might think, as they appear much bigger, but it's really gonna boil down to which team is the USA on it, because as more American aircraft get added, there's already a clear imbalance in USA and Sim. If you play USA, it's harder to find a game than if you were to play Russia, because there's a lot more people playing American planes. They tend to have better avionics and just tend to do better in Sim because they're more detailed cockpits. Everything's English, so majority of the player base can read it. And it just tends to boil down to who has more American aircraft on their team and who has more people on their team, because team imbalance in Sim can be up to 3 players, and Sim really just does not care about the level or the quality of the planes on your team, because you could be facing a team of entirely 11 sevens while your entire team is 10 sevens with 111.3 aircraft, and you could just get absolutely raffle stomped. And there's no real nuance to that, because it tends to be that one team stomps the other out in Sim, and not that there's really any counter-player tension. Now I'm just going to let this footage play out, and if you want to watch till the end to see the reward screen, that's up to you, but anyway, peace.